the wine glass crushed against the wall,
You think this is
red
a
liquid
game?
streaming down like blood. Zara Campbell stood frozen in the private dining room, her heart hammering as Lee Jae rose from his seat with the kind of controlled fury that made grown men weep. You. His voice was pure ice, but his eyes burned. You think you can insult me? Serve me this garbage and expect me to smile? I didn't, Zara's voice cracked, her Jamaican accent thickening under stress. There was a mistake with the "get out of my sight." He stepped closer, and she caught a glimpse of the black ink crawling up his neck from beneath his collar, a dragon's tail, dangerous and deliberate. So close she could smell his cologne, expensive, intoxicating. Before I do something we'll both regret. But the way he looked at her, the way his gaze lingered on her lips even as rage twisted his face, that wasn't just anger. That was something far more dangerous. They called him the Ice Prince of Seoul's culinary world. Lee Jae, 34, devastatingly handsome and completely untouchable, heir to the largest restaurant empire in Korea, food critic whose single review could destroy careers, and the man who'd gone through 3 engagements without making it to the altar, because no woman could thaw the frost around his heart. He was tall, 6 feet 2 inches of lean muscle and sharp angles. His face belonged in dramas, with intense eyes that seemed to see through pretense, lips that rarely smiled but, when they did, made women forget their own names. A black dragon tattoo coiled up his neck and disappeared into his hairline ink he'd gotten at 19 to horrify his traditional family. It had worked. It also made him look like he belonged in a gangster film rather than a boardroom. He wore custom suits like armor and had never, in his entire adult life, lost control. Until a bold Jamaican chef, with brown skin like midnight silk and defiant eyes, had served him the worst kimchi jjigae he'd ever tasted, and looked at him like she wasn't afraid, like she saw past the ice and the ink to something he'd spent years trying to freeze out of existence. Welcome back, lovers. This is Soul Heart Stories, where hearts collide across cultures and love refuses to follow anyone's rules. Please kindly show your encouragement by subscribing to this channel. It would mean a whole lot to me, because you're not just watching, you're shaping these stories with me. Zara Campbell had come to Seoul running from a broken heart and a failed restaurant. At 31, she thought she'd found her person Marcus, another chef, charming and supportive, until success came knocking. Then suddenly her ideas were too ambitious, her dreams unrealistic, and, oh, by the way, he'd been sleeping with the sous chef for 6 months. Seoul was supposed to be her fresh start, a place where no one knew about her humiliation, where she could disappear into work and forget that she'd been stupid enough to believe in love. She was beautiful in a way that made people stare, tall, curvy, with natural hair she wore in locks that cascaded down her back. Her smile could light up rooms, though these days she rarely used it. Her rich brown skin glowed, and her eyes held a sadness she tried to hide behind confidence. When she spoke, her Jamaican patois emerged in moments of passion or anger, a connection to home she couldn't quite leave behind. The job at Hanok Kitchen had been perfect. Mrs. Park, the owner, was kind. The kitchen was manageable, and Zara had finally started to feel like maybe, just maybe, she could build something new here. Then Lee Jae had walked into her restaurant and everything had gone catastrophically wrong. The mistake hadn't even been hers. A new prep cook had contaminated the gochugaru, making the kimchi jjigae bitter and wrong. But Zara was the head chef. The failure was hers to own. She'd watched Jae take one bite, watched his expression shift from neutral to disgusted. And then, God help her, she'd watched him stand up, that dragon tattoo shifting with the movement of his neck, and her traitorous body had responded to his height, his presence, the raw masculine energy that radiated off him like heat. "This is an insult," he'd said, his voice low and dangerous. "I'll remake it. She'd rushed out from the kitchen. And then he'd seen her, really seen her. Something had flashed in his eyes, something hot and startled before the ice slammed back down. "You're the chef?" He'd looked her up and down in a way that made her skin burn. "The Jamaican?" "Yes, and I apologize. I don't want your apologies." He'd stepped closer, invading her space. "I want to know who gave you permission to ruin Korean food." The racism in his words had been subtle, but Zara had felt it, and something else underneath a fascination he was trying desperately to hide. "No one gave me permission," she'd said, lifting her chin. "I earned my place here. Did you?" His eyes had dropped to her lips, just for a second. "Or did you use other talents to convince Mrs. Park to hire you?" The implication had been clear and vile. Zara had slapped him. The sound had echoed through the silent restaurant. Jaewon's head had barely moved, but his eyes had gone absolutely black. "You just ended your career," he'd whispered. "Ya just show me exactly why kinda man ya be," she'd whispered back, her patois emerging in her rage. They'd stood there, inches apart, both breathing hard. The air between them had been electric, charged with fury and something neither wanted to name. Then he'd smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "I'm going to destroy you," he'd promised. "Your restaurant, your reputation, your future in this city. And you're going to wish you'd never come to Korea." "Try it," Zara had challenged. "I've survived worse than a spoiled rich boy with a god complex and some pretty ink." He'd left without another word. But at the door, he'd turned back, and the look he'd given her had been pure heat wrapped in ice. The review had appeared the next morning, and it was brutal. But woven through the professional criticism were personal attacks that felt oddly possessive. He wrote about her audacity, her presumption, the way she invaded spaces she had no right to occupy. It read less like a review and more like a jealous lover's rage. Zara lost her job. Mrs. Park had cried while firing her. The restaurant closed within a month, not just because of the review, but because Jaewon had used his influence to cut off their suppliers, pressure their landlord, systematically dismantle everything Mrs. Park had built. It was excessive, obsessive. Zara should have left Korea, should have gone home to Kingston, and licked her wounds. Instead, she did something crazy. She rented a tiny apartment in Itaewon and started a pop-up dinner series out of spite. If Jaewon wanted to destroy her, fine. But she'd go down cooking the food she wanted, the way she wanted. She called it convergence. Korean techniques meets Caribbean soul, callaloo kimchi, gochujang jerk chicken, sweet potato tetok with rum caramel and scotch bonnet heat. The Instagram account at Island Girl Soul Kitchen went viral almost immediately. Not because the food was controversial, though it was, but because Zara was stunning, confident, and unapologetically herself. And because everyone loves watching an underdog fight back against a powerful enemy, especially when that enemy kept showing up in the comment section under fake accounts, criticizing everything while somehow never missing a single post. Jaewon told himself he was monitoring the situation, making sure this arrogant Jamaican woman didn't spread her influence further. That's why he checked her Instagram 12 times a day. Why he read every caption, watched every video, memorized the way she laughed when something went right in the kitchen. It had nothing to do with the fact that he couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she'd looked at him that night, unafraid, disgusted, disappointed, like he was less than what he should be. No one had looked at him like that since his grandfather died. Everyone else treated him like royalty or feared him like a tyrant. The tattoo helped with that, made people think twice before crossing him. She treated him like an asshole who needed to be checked. And God help him, it had turned him on more than any woman had in years. He'd gone home that night hard and furious, taken a cold shower that did nothing, and then done something he hadn't done since he was a teenager, touched himself while thinking about a woman he hated. Except he didn't hate her. That was the problem. He hated that she'd made him feel something. Hated that her food had actually been innovative before that one disaster. Hated that she was beautiful and brilliant and so far under his skin he could barely breathe. His friends noticed. His mother noticed. Everyone noticed that Lee Jae, the man who never lost his composure, had become obsessed with destroying one Jamaican chef. Just leave her alone, his best friend Minho had advised. You've already won. She lost her job, her reputation. She's still cooking. So, she's doing pop-ups for 20 people. You own 15 restaurants. Why do you care? Because he checked her Instagram 40 times a day. Because he'd driven past her apartment at 2 a.m. just to see if her lights were on. Because he'd created 5 fake accounts to comment on her posts, arguing with her, praising her, engaging with her in the only way she'd allow. Because he was losing his mind. I'm going to her next pop-up, Jae announced. That's insane. She'll throw you out. Let her try. Zara had been setting up for the dinner when he walked in. 24 seats, all sold out. Her biggest event yet. She'd frozen with a plate in her hands. Get out. I have a reservation. He'd held up his phone, showing the confirmation. Table for one. Paid in full. I don't care. Get out. Make me. They'd stared at each other across the small space. Every guest was watching, phones out, sensing drama. Fine, Zara had said coldly. Sit, eat, choke on it for all I care. She'd served him every course personally, slammed down each plate with barely controlled fury, and watched with savage satisfaction as he tasted each dish, his expression growing more conflicted with every bite. The food was exceptional. They both knew it. When dessert came, her grandmother's coconut gizzata with misugaru ice cream, he'd finally spoken. This is brilliant. I know. You're wasted doing pop-ups. Whose fault is that? After everyone left, Jae had remained in his seat. Zara had started cleaning up, ignoring him pointedly. I was wrong, he'd said quietly. About what? My food? My right to cook Korean cuisine? My worth as a human being? All of it. He'd stood, moved closer. The dragon on his neck seemed to shift in the dim light. I was wrong, and I was cruel. And he'd stopped, struggled. I can't stop thinking about you. Zara had laughed bitterly. Is that supposed to make me feel better? You destroyed my life because you have a crush? Not a crush. His voice had gone rough. An obsession. I check your Instagram constantly. I drive past your apartment. I created fake accounts just to talk to you. I'm losing my mind, Zara. Good. She'd thrown a towel at him. You deserve it. I know. He'd caught the towel. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I should leave you alone. But I can't. He'd stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his heat. Tell me you don't feel this too. Tell me you don't lie awake at night thinking about that moment in the restaurant when we were inches apart and you wanted to hit me as much as I wanted to kiss you. Zara's breath had caught because he was right. God help her, he was right. I hate you, she'd whispered. I know. He'd reached out slowly, giving her time to move away. When she didn't, his fingers had brushed her cheek. But you want me anyway. That doesn't mean let me make it right. His thumb had traced her lower lip. Let me undo everything I did. I'll write a retraction. I'll use my influence to help you instead of hurt you. Why? She'd grabbed his wrist, stopping the touch that was making her dizzy. Why now? Because you finally realized I can actually cook? Because your ego can handle admitting you were wrong? Because I'm falling in love with you? The words had burst out of him raw and desperate. Because I've been falling since that first night when you looked at me, like I was just a man, not a name or a title or some dangerous gangster because of this. He touched his tattoo. Because you slapped me and called me on my bullshit and didn't back down even when I tried to destroy you. Because you're brilliant and beautiful, and you make me feel things I thought I'd frozen out of myself years ago. Zara had stared at him, her heart racing. You're mad. Probably. He'd smiled, and it was nothing like his usual cold expression. This smile was vulnerable, hopeful, but I'm also completely serious. Give me a chance. Let me prove I can be better than the worst version of myself. And if I say no, then I'll leave you alone. I'll still write the retraction, still try to undo the damage, but I'll stay out of your life. His hand had dropped. I won't force anything you don't want. Zara should have said no, should have protected her heart, remembered how this man had tried to ruin her life, should have been smart. Instead, she grabbed his stupidly expensive tie and pulled him down to her level. One chance, she'd whispered against his lips. You get one chance. And if you hurt me again, I won't. He'd cupped her face with both hands, gentle in a way that contradicted everything she knew about him. I swear to God, Zara, I won't. The kiss had been inevitable, explosive. All the fury and frustration and unwanted attraction of the past, months igniting into something that made them both gasp. When they'd finally broken apart, both breathing hard, Jae had rested his forehead against hers. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making this up to you. You're going to spend the rest of tonight helping me clean this kitchen, Zara had replied. And tomorrow, you're going to help me find investors for my restaurant. A real one, where I cook my food my way. Done. He'd kissed her again, softer this time. Anything you want, I want you to mean it. The apology, the support, all of it. I do. His arms had wrapped around her waist, pulling her close. I've never meant anything more in my life. 6 months later, Convergence opened in Gangnam with Lee Jae-won's investment and blessing. His 5-star review appeared opening night, calling it the future of Korean cuisine rooted in tradition but brave enough to evolve. The restaurant was packed every night. Food critics flew in from around the world. And Lee Jae-won showed up every evening, sitting at table 7, watching Zara command her kitchen like the queen she was. Their relationship scandalized Seoul's high society, the ice prince with the gangster tattoo and the black Jamaican chef. But Jae-won had stopped caring what anyone thought the moment Zara had given him that first chance. He'd learned to make her grandmother's gazada. She'd learned to tolerate his protective streak. Together, they'd learned that love wasn't about perfection. It was about two imperfect people, choosing each other every day despite the odds. On quiet nights, when the restaurant was closed, Zara would find him in her office, and he'd pull her into his lap. I love you, he'd murmur against her neck, the dragon tattoo visible as he tilted his head. You better, she'd reply, her patois softening with affection. After everything you put me through, I'll spend forever making it up to you. I'm counting on it. And when he kissed her soft and deep and full of promise, Zara would remember that first horrible night and marvel at how catastrophically wrong could transform into perfectly right. Because sometimes the person who breaks you is the only one who knows how to put you back together. Sometimes hate is just love that hasn't figured itself out yet. And sometimes the worst meal you ever served someone becomes the beginning of the greatest love story of your life. Family, if this story gave you feelings, and I know it did, kindly smash that like button. Subscribe if you haven't, because we've got more enemies to lovers' tension coming that'll make your heart race. And comment below, do you want more professional settings like restaurants? Or should we explore different worlds where love can bloom? Your voice shapes every story we create. Thank you for being here, for supporting love stories that cross every boundary, and for believing that even the messiest beginnings can lead to beautiful endings. Until next time, keep your heart open to impossible love. You never know when your enemy might become your everything.